IELTS by the way, writing tutorial. Hello, this video provides information on how to write a bar graph report for academic Task 1 IELTS exam. From this video you will learn a Band 9 answer structure, a strategy on how to correctly write each paragraph for a perfect answer, an exciting example of bar graph answer, specific vocabulary that must be used in the future. Now let's have a look at this Band 9 scheme structure. Ideally, the report should consist of 4 paragraphs: introduction, overview, body paragraph 1, and body paragraph 2. By following this structure, scoring a Band 9 is not an issue. It is the time to look at the example. This task card presents the task description and the bar graph itself. The bar graph below provides information about the increase in average housing prices in 3 different cities in New Zealand between 2000 and 2020. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Here we can see a bar graph. On the right side of the graph there is a key with description of the bars. The horizontal axis illustrates the time period in years, while the vertical axis shows percentages. Now we are going to write our first paragraph, introduction. Here I provided recommendations for a Band 9 introduction. Remember, introduction paragraph must include no more than 2 sentences. Simply paraphrase the task using synonyms as much as possible. Include the period of time if it's applicable. Finally, mention units of measurement, such as percentages or tons, depending on what is given on the bar graph. My example of introduction. On the top you can see the task, and on the bottom my answer. I will demonstrate how I paraphrased the task and wrote the introduction, word by word and phrase by phrase. The phrase "the bar graph" I changed with the bar chart. Instead of "below provides", I wrote "illustrates". Information has a synonym "data". About the increase in changed to about the escalation of. Average housing pricing altered to standard accommodation cost. Here is an exciting moment. We are given the phrase in 3 different cities in New Zealand. I paraphrased these words for Wellington, Auckland and Hamilton, mentioned on the bar graph. It is a standard step and you should follow this. Always identify specific information from the bar graph. By this you demonstrate that you read the task and the graph with a high level of attention. The phrase between 2000 and 2020 should be paraphrased for from 2000 to 2020. Here you can see the introduction that consists of 2 sentences. The first sentence is just the paraphrased task. The second sentence is the description of the units of measurement. The final sentence is not shown in the task description, but mentioned as a recommendation to the Band 9 introduction. You will always find this information from the bar graph. It is units of measurements. I wrote all the values are given percentage-wise. Paragraph 2. Overview. Before we start, have a look at the list of recommendations for a perfect overview. Mention no more than 4 main trends from the bar graph, ideally 3. Give only general information from the bar graph. Do not mention dates or numbers in your overview. Detailed information will be described in body paragraphs. Make comparisons. It is compulsory, as it is asked in the task. Remember, always start your overview from the phrase "overall it can be seen". It is the indicator for the examiner that you write overview. How to identify the main trends? Here is a list of recommendations. Visually separate the bars on the bar graph. Identify if something experiences a downward or upward trend. Look for changes for each trend throughout the period of time given. Group the information and make comparisons. Looking at this bar chart, we need to visually separate these bars for bars with the same colors. Straight after the separation, we can see the blue bars that describe the trend of Wellington. It is obvious that Wellington experienced a downward trend. Starting at 60% in 2000, Wellington's rates of increase dropped steadily over the period and reached 20% in 2020. This is our first trend. Wellington's rates of increase drop steadily. After the next visual separation, we can see the red bars that describe the trend of Auckland. It is clear that Auckland experienced an upward trend. Starting at only 20% in 2000, Auckland's rates of increase grew gradually over the period and reached 50% in 2020. This is our second trend. Auckland's rates of increase grew gradually. After the next visual separation, we can see the green bars that describe Hamilton's trend. We can see that at the beginning of the period, in 2000, Hamilton had around 18%, and later, in 2005, there was a slight increase. What followed that was a relatively steady period. And this is our third trend, Hamilton's rates of increase. At this moment, we should group the information that we have collected. All three trends must be included in our overview: Wellington's trend, Auckland's trend, and Hamilton's trend. Below the graph you can see the overview that I wrote. Let's read the overview. Overall, it can be seen that the rates of increase in Wellington dropped steadily, while in Auckland the rates grew gradually. Surprisingly, a different pattern emerged for Hamilton, initially showing a slight rise in percentages, remaining relatively steady onwards. Pay attention, according to the recommendations, the first phrase is "overall it can be seen." Then I included the first trend related to Wellington. Further, I included the second trend related to Auckland. Trend number 3 I included in the second sentence. To make comparisons and ensure coherence and cohesion, I use specific words and phrases that I highlighted in yellow. These words and phrases are "while," "surprisingly," and a different pattern emerged for. Again, these words serve as the indicators of comparisons and make the overview sound logical. Let's move to writing body paragraphs. Before I start the explanation, have a look at the recommendations for a perfect body paragraph. Describe the main trends from your overview with the details from the bar graph. In body paragraphs, you must use dates, numbers, and percentages from the bar graph. You should write at least 2 body paragraphs, ideally no more than 2, otherwise it will take too much time. Make sure that your writing is logically organized. To make it logically organized, use elements of cohesion and coherence. Remember, the examiner assesses your language skills and is looking at a wide range of vocabulary. You must demonstrate complex sentence structure to score a higher band. To start the writing, you need to group the trends into different body paragraphs. In this particular example, I grouped the trends in this way. In body paragraph 1, I described in detail the trend of Wellington. In body paragraph 2, I described in detail the trends of Auckland and Hamilton. Body paragraph 1. This is how I wrote body paragraph 1. In 2000, the growth of accommodation prices in Wellington accounted for 60%, the highest rate among the cities. However, in 2005, it dropped by roughly 14% and reached around 46%. What followed was a period of gradual fall, to 40% in 2010. Further, the rates continued to decline steadily, reaching only 1 in 5 in 2020. We are going to analyze each sentence of this paragraph. I use different colors to provide the explanation. Sentence number 1. By the yellow color, I highlighted years and percentages. For example, in 2000 and 60%. Accounted is a verb colored by green to call attention. This verb should be used with percentages and years. The red color indicates the phrase I used to provide contrast, the highest rate among the cities. The second sentence. The first word, however, is highlighted by the red color and serves as an element of cohesion and coherence to link ideas between sentences, make smooth transitions, and make our writing logical. The verbs colored by the green color, dropped and reached, perfectly describe the trend and followed by the percentages. Pay attention to the words roughly and around. They have a specific purpose. we are given only round numbers on the axis. On the bar graph, 20, 30 and 50%. However, the bars indicate values that are not illustrated on the axis. Thus, we can only assume those values and propose our numbers, for example, roughly 14% and around 46%. The third sentence. The first phrase, what followed was a period of, highlighted by the red color, and serves as another element of cohesion and coherence. Not only marks a smooth transition between sentences, but also illustrates how the trend developed over time. The verb fall, highlighted by the green color, has an adjective gradual, customarily used to describe something that happens slowly. Adjectives are indispensable to emphasize the degree of changes in writing bar graph reports. The percentages and the year colored by the yellow color, similar to the previous sentence. Sentence number 4. I started the sentence with the word further, colored by the red color. The word further indicates something that happens in a distant time, adds cohesion and serves as a transition word. By violet, I highlighted steadily. The word steadily is an adverb and has an almost identical meaning as the word gradually, and customarily used to describe something that happens slowly. Adverbs provide additional information about other words. In our case, the word steadily describes the verb decline. The word only emphasizes that something has a small value. Students need to know how to use fractions in the IELTS exam. Therefore, I wrote 1 in 5 instead of 20%. Body paragraph 2. And this is how I wrote my body paragraph 2. Auckland's increase rate started at 20% in 2000 and grew to 30% in 2010. This figure then rose more rapidly. Thus, in 2020 reached a peak of 50%. Meanwhile, Hamilton's rates remained relatively stable throughout the period. Starting at around 18% in 2000, it gradually rose to approximately 22% in 2005. Further, it fluctuated slightly and stopped at almost a quarter in 2020. Again, we are going to analyze each sentence of this paragraph. Sentence 1. Similarly to the previous paragraph, the yellow color indicates years and percentages in 2000 and 20%, in 2010 and 30%. Started and grew are verbs colored by green to call attention. These verbs should be used with percentages and years. The red color indicates the phrase I used to provide a transition among the trends. Auckland's rates of increase worked as a bridge to start the trend of Auckland logically. The second sentence. The phrase of "this figure then rose more rapidly" used to retain the attention at Auckland, to illustrate how the trend developed over time. As long as the second body paragraph encompasses two trends, we should concisely describe each trend, as the time is limited by only 20 minutes during the actual exam. The word peak is the indicator of the highest point of this trend. It should be used to emphasize the main features. The red word thus is an adverb. In this particular case, is used to show the consequences of the previous events. Sentence number 3. This sentence starts with the adverb meanwhile, to finish the description of the previous trend and start the description of another trend. Meanwhile means at the same time. Remained relatively stable is a collocation that describes the whole trend of Hamilton in 3 words. It means that although there were insignificant fluctuations, the rates remained steady, almost at the same level. Sentence number 4. Again, we cannot state that the increase rate in 2000 was exactly 18%, and in 2005 it was exactly 22%, as it's not indicated on the graph. We can only see the whole numbers on the graph. Thus, we are obliged to use words like around and approximately. The adverb gradually, that is colored by red, means something that happens slowly over the period. Remember to use adverbs and adjectives to describe the verbs better and make the sentences look complex. Sentence number 5. To avoid repetitions of just descriptions of similar events and keep the report concise, use the adverb further to present the facts that happen throughout the period and at the end. Fluctuated slightly is a collocation that describes the trend over a certain period. Fluctuated means it was changing, however slightly means that without significant increases and decreases, at least those that we should mention. At almost a quarter in 2020, the word almost is used to show that it's not clear that there was a 25% decrease. It's not written on the graph. However, it can be assumed. A quarter is just 25% expressed by words. At this moment, the full answer could be read from the introduction to the body paragraph 2.